Howdy folks, hope you're doing well today. We're going to take a look at arrays here. So we start up a new project. We don't really want to kind of mix and match this inside of our database project here. So I'm going to make sure I put it inside of our Git repository here, right? So this is the one for our course, and then I'll call this one arrays. And I actually want to put that inside of another folder here. So be inside the repository, inside a folder named arrays, called the project arrays. Okay, and then we want to make sure I'm on port 5080 because I have to change that, and then I want to copy to the htdocs folders in an arrays location, right? So anything that's inside of htdocs matches that URL /arrays here. Okay, we'll go next, and finish. We'll start up this project. So we've worked with arrays before, mostly around the database stuff, which has been pretty fun, but there's a lot more to it, and you can do a lot with arrays. So I don't want to get into everything that's in the chapter. Ideally, you're going to skim through it, and you'll see that, hey, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And we're not going to practice every single one of those. So just the basic array here, we might go through. This will be, how about this is like an array of scores. So I'll say scores equals array. And then inside of here, now I can just comma separate my values. So maybe someone got a 95, and then maybe a 97, and a 100, and an 82, and then we'll say 100. So this scores array now has these values inside of it. And it's not exactly like an array like you might think in Java, if you're familiar with basic arrays in Java. It's more like an array list. So it's very flexible. You can add to it, you can take away from it. Arrays are very flexible in PHP, which is nice. So if I wanted to, then I could take scores and I could set particular values by index. Right? So this is going to be index 0. Let's bump this over a little bit here. So this is index 0, right? Index 1, index 2, index 3, and index 4. Right? This is like you're used to here. These are indexes. So I could set or get a value using the index notation here if I wanted. Let me bump that over one. Try and line that up just a little nicer. That's probably close. So if I just wanted to print all of them here, I could echo scores of 0, and that's kind of a boring way to do it. Maybe a nicer way is to do a little loop for it here, or you actually have an option here to print R. So it's print R given the scores array, which is really nice. Let's give this a quick little run, see if we can get some values out here. Here we go. And you'll see this crazy looking notation. Oops, sorry. So you get the index and the associative value with this fat arrow. That's the equal sign greater than is what we'll call a fat arrow. And then 1, fat arrow 97, index 2 is 100, index 3 is 82, index 4 is 100. Right, is that what we put in here? Right, 200s, great. Yeah, it looks correct. So we can print them all easily here if you just want to see what's inside of it, but that's not a very friendly way of, letting someone else see the particular values here. So most of the time what we'd want to do is do some sort of loop, right? And so it'd be better then if we said, hey, how about 4, and we'll say index is 0, index is less than, and we're going to say count of scores here, right? Count is essentially the length, will tell me how many we have, and index plus plus. And then here, then I could echo out my scores at the index, right? So index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4, and again, we'll probably want to do some sort of like a line break in here to make that look a little prettier as well. So add a line break, concatenate this in here, and we'll see what this one comes out for us now. Then we just get the values, right? That's probably more like what we would do if we wanted to still show indexes. We could, right? We could say, here's the dollar index colon our scores, and then maybe add in a line break /br. There we go. Right, and with our double quotes, that should work out well for us. The interpolation, right, we can just see those values get thrown right in there for us, which is nice. Now what's cool though, if you want to add more values to scores here, I can just say scores square brace that are empty. So to add a value to the end, right, you just say equals, hey, how about somebody got here a 78? And let's do that inside of here. So that should then become index 5 when we give this one a run. Let me just I've got it over here. I'll just refresh it here. There we go. We don't need all those. So it just adds it to the end, which is fun. Now, if you want to, you can also say scores index of, and give it a particular index, and we'll say that one is a 92. Now, I'm jumping from index, this is going to become 5, will be index 5, to saying, hey, this becomes index 10, right? And let's see how that looks for us. We get, uh-oh, undefined array key 6. There is no 6. Now it gets an error. So it puts it at 10, but 6 is not defined, so we have a gap there, which is, that's really not what you want to do here. So what we can do is if we want to see if there's a value there, we can check if it's set. So what we're actually getting, let me just do a print R on that one here real quick. Print R, given scores, and we can see that value real quick. So what we get when we print it here is the key of 5 associated with value 78. Here's the key of 10 with value 92. Right? There is no other index there. Right? It's not there at all. So we'd have to check to see if it's set. So if it's set is our way of saying, okay, is there a value there? So we're going to say if is set given my scores at index. So if it's set, then we can echo it out here and give it a little format. There we go. Give that a run. So now we're just getting the values here. But we don't get this value 10, right? Because there aren't 10 values there. Right? So we've set it into index 10, but it doesn't exist now. Right? That's no good. That's not going to loop the way that we expect it to, because we're counting how many values are inside of it here, but they don't all have to have that same value, which is a little funny here. So what we can do instead is we can get the last value out, which is a little funny here. But we can say, hey, I want the last index is going to be, and I can use this key function, key of scores. And I'll say, okay, it is less than or equal to the last. And let's give this one a save and a run here. Oh, nope, that only gave us one of them here. Shoot, that should have given me more. Oh, we have to go, I'm sorry, we have to go to the end. So before we get the last here, we need to go to the end. So we'll say end of my scores. Takes me to the end. Then I'll get the current key here. Then we should be able to do that. Let's see. Here we go. Now we're checking through. So we're going to go to the end of the array. We'll get that key out. We're calling it an index. It's really a key, and we'll see that in just a minute here. And then we can loop through and get all those values. If it's not set, sure, no problem. We're just going to skip over it here. Now, why that works the way that it does here is that arrays are also mapping types. So you might have known of them as, what do we call those in Java? Like I think it's just a map, like a hash map you might do in Java, or a dictionary in Python, or even a dictionary in C# and some other languages. But what that means is I can take a key and associate a value with it. So what we did in here is really the indexes are the keys, and that's why we said this is the key function here at the end. It gives me the last key. But I can make another array here, so we can do, how about this will be names and scores here. We'll say is equal to an array, and then the syntax here is you give it the key, which is a unique value. So keys must be unique. So this is keys and associated values. So keys must be unique. We'll see, why that will work in just a minute here. So the key then we'll say is Eric, and then you do the fat arrow for the associated value. So Eric's score is going to be 100, of course, and then we'll comma separate. And then we'll say, maybe Jeb's taking my class, my son. He's following along. He's probably doing all right, maybe getting a 95 here. And then my younger daughter, Journey, wants to try and learn to code. She started doing Code Combat, but she's not been doing so great at following along at our level of classes here. And we'll say she has a 75. So you get key and associated value. So it's key, fat arrow, value. And then if we were to print this one out, we could print the names and scores here. It'll look just like this one up here, right? But now instead of the index here, we get the string key and the associated value, the string key and the associated value, the string key and the associated value. Then this is where it gets even crazier. I can take my names and scores and I can just add something to it here. let's just add in a score of 23. Yeah, 23. Then what we get here, now the key becomes 0. It just adds to the next index value. So by default, your keys tend to be indexes or numeric values, but you don't have to do that. So these keys here become those values. So if we want to use any of those particular values here, right, that's like scores of 10 or whatever index here, I could say, hey, if my names and scores index of Eric is greater than 94, right, then we can echo Eric gets an A. Right? Not the most interesting thing here, but it's going to say, hey, find the value associated with this key. Right? So it looks for a value associated with the key. So the same as when we did indexes here. Right? It's just like an index, but now we're giving it a string-based key. And we'll see Eric gets an A, because, of course, my score is higher there. So we can have different keys and indexes kind of mixed and matched. It gets real messy here, but that's why you might have noticed when we're using the results from our database tables, we got that array and we said, hey, you can get things out by name here, by the named columns, or by index value, right? Both were available there when we were debugging that. Again, I'm always going to recommend using the column name when we talk about database stuff, but you could get both, and they're both available with this sort of this weird way that arrays are really mapping types, and you can use keys and indexes, kind of mix and match as you go if you want here. So that's the associative array is our technical term for that here. And it's going to work well for either of those. So if you want to add new keys here, I could say names and scores, and maybe we'll say, hey, my daughter Vivi wants to take the class, and maybe she's doing getting a 94. So this is an add or update, right? If this key exists, it will update. If it doesn't exist, it will add, right? So I could say names and scores. How about we'll update Jeb's score and say maybe Jeb spent a little more time studying here, and now he's getting a 99, right? And then we can print it out again. We'll see this will add and this will update. Here, let's give this a save, and I just refresh my page. And now we see Jeb scores 99. It updated, but then it added Vivi, and it's just going to add it into the end. So the 0 index is not the first thing in here. Right? They're going to be added in order. So it gets a little funky there when you're working with them. But that's essentially how we can use those mapping types. So then if you wanted to loop through a mapping type, right, we'd say for each, and then we have our names and scores, right, as, and then what we can do in here is we can give it the key. So we'll say name, fat arrow, score. So it's going to take the key, map it to name, the associated value, map it to score, and then we can echo out, how about name as a score of, and then score, and then maybe add in some line breaks in here. Maybe we'll do them at the front. Why not? Line breaks. Add in a couple of those. So we'll echo out all of the names and scores, the keys and associated values here in our loop. And we can see, okay, Eric has a score of 100, Jeb is 99, Journey has a score of 75, 0 has a score of 23. Well, that's weird, but 0 is a key. Right? We added in here, that's the key, its associated value is 23, and Vivi's 94. Okay, so you can loop through with this same notation. Now, technically, you don't need to use the names here, or the keys are optional. So the key is optional. You can just loop through the values. Right? So the other thing we could do then, if we didn't need to know the index, right, with one of these loops here, we could do the same thing. We could say for each, and this would be scores as score. We could echo just the score. Oh, sorry, we need a line break in there too, right? Add in some line breaks. I don't know. We'll have a bunch here. So this same function, right, works with this scores array. It's still technically a mapping type, right? The indexes here are really the keys. So that same for each notation works for you here. And then you don't have to worry about if it's been set or not, right? You can just go through and grab all of them without having to worry about if it was set or not there, right? And have to deal with any of this weird nonsense where now index 10 is a value of 92. Right? You just want to just go get all of those out here. Oh, did I put that? Did I put it in lower? Yeah, I did it in after. I'm sorry. After. So I just did the scores, right? So we're not getting the, oh, there's the 92. Yeah, so 95, but you're not getting the index values here. You're not getting the keys out. If you wanted to get the keys out, right, you can do the key and value loop there. So it works out pretty well for you. And again, you can make these look kind of any way you want with your loops. Now, there's like lots of other cool things you can do with arrays. Padding and merging and slicing and splicing and filling and getting ranges and values. Um, just know that you can go look that up. So look through it in the book. I'm not going to have you do any exercises with them. It's just a lot of different things you can do with arrays. You can see if keys exist. You can see if values are in arrays. You can search arrays and you can count values in arrays. Again, that's all fun things you can do there. So the difference there in array is looking for a value, and array key exists is looking for the key. And hopefully that makes some sense there. And then you can also search an array there to see if something's inside of it, and then counting particular values as well. So got a couple options there. So the in array is just going to tell you true or false. The search is going to give you the associated key with the value that you're trying to search. So it gets a little funny. Again, just look at the examples there. It's not too crazy here, but you can do some fun things with those, and sorting as well, reversing, shuffling, all sorts of really cool array things, just kind of to keep in your toolkit there. And then, like we see on our database tables, you can have an array of arrays, right? So that, here's a collection of arrays, and each of those arrays has value. So that's why we had to do those loops like we did when we were working with our database tables. All right, and that's about it for arrays, folks. You take care, and I'll see you in the next video.